Vivek Gambhir joining us now of GCPL to talk us through those earnings as well. Thanks so much for joining us, Vivek. Now, the outbreak, of course, of COVID-19 impacting all companies, you do seem to have seen a bit more of a hit than some of your other peers in consumer staples. What's hurt the most, despite the fact that you have a portfolio consisting of essentials?
Good morning. I hope that you and the ET family are all safe and well. As you correctly pointed out, it was a weak performance overall, and performance fell below our expectations. The impact of COVID-19 was very adverse for us. Till February for the year, our volume growth was trending at about 5%. So it was leading volume growth in the industry. But during the COVID crisis, our India and Africa business got impacted the most. Indonesia, which has not seen the kind of lockdown that India and African countries have seen, continued its strong momentum. What actually happened was that typically the last couple of weeks of March, we have very high sales during this time, as it is the onset of the summer season for soaps. It is also the onset of the mosquito infestation in home insecticides. But basically, markets were shut down for the last 10 days of the month, and we almost had zero sales. So the impact was very severe. What gives us some comfort is that we have seen some recovery in April, and April has seen positive growth. Home insecticides in particular has been picking up. And what is also encouraging is that we have continued to gain market share. In fact, even in Q4, we gained share in over 90% of our portfolio in India and 70% of our portfolio globally.
Okay, what do you think have been, the sales lost due to the pandemic? And you've missed out, as you said, on high mosquito infestation period as well. What was your March sales target, though?
As our teams were preparing the forecast for the month of March, they were planning for a very strong March. And we fell short in India by almost 250 crores as far as our sales in March were concerned. And so if we had delivered the March forecast, we would have actually achieved a 1 or 2% growth for the year with much higher volume growth. So the impact actually over the last 10 days in March was very adverse for us. But as I mentioned to you, we are now seeing a gradual recovery. April has seen positive growth, and home insecticides in particular has been picking up.
Vivek, despite the consumer focus on hygiene and the onset of summers, the soap segment has seen a decline of nearly 23%. What has hurt the segment this time around, and what have been some of the key challenges that you faced here?
Across the board, the biggest impact has been that markets were shut down for the last 10 days of the month, and which is why we had zero sales. So the impact of zero sales actually ended up impacting all our categories, including soaps. In the soap segment, again, we have been gaining market share. Our market shares today are at an all-time high. And so we again have a very strong perspective that the soap category is doing well for us. We are gaining share. But the reason for soaps was pretty much the shutdown that we saw across all the other categories as well, particularly home and personal care.
Now, you mentioned that April is seeing an uptick. So which is it that the segments are that are seeing the most traction that we are seeing in most areas as well, that the lockdown has been relaxed?
We do believe that while the situation remains very challenging, we are relatively well positioned and have several strengths that will hold us in good stead during this time. One big trend that we are seeing is the flight to value, as consumers increasingly seek more affordable, high quality, value for money products. Over 70% of our portfolio is essentially value for money or essentials. We're also seeing a resurgence in our insecticide business as consumers are looking to protect themselves from all diseases. Dengue rates, for instance, have been spiking up in Southeast Asia. So we definitely see a greater focus on disease prevention. We also believe that hygiene and the trend towards health and wellness will accelerate. And we do feel that is going to be a big growth opportunity for us. What is also quite interesting is that the consumer definition of what they consider essentials is now changing. So till a few weeks ago, it was largely about food staples and sanitizers. But in some recent surveys that we have done, 60% of consumers now consider hair colors as essential. 45% of consumers consider air fresheners for their homes essential as well. So we do believe that the demand for these items will gradually increase. So again, while the situation remains challenging, we do believe that there will be pockets of opportunity. And through some of the great work that the teams are doing on the ground to be able to improve our distribution and availability and also launch tactical innovations, we should be relatively well positioned over the quarters ahead.
Right. Vivek, wanted to understand, with the easing of the lockdown now, what is the status of your factories? What kind of capacity utilizations are you running at?
The good news is that we've received all permissions. So all our factories and warehouses are now operational. Most distributors are operational as well. So things are easing back to normal. Our factories are running today at about 60 to 70% production levels, with 50 to 60% of workers. Most distributors are operational as well, but active servicing through our sales reps and our own sales team in the market is still a challenge. So many of our sales reps are working and operating virtually to meet the market demand. The big issue clearly still is labor availability, particularly in the front line. So given the migrant labor situation, I think that has been a big challenge. And so while all the permissions have come up and we're trying our best to ramp up supply chain operations, the big thing we will look for over the next few months is to be able to get the migrant labor back to the cities so that the supply chains can be fully restored. But so far, things have been easing back to normal.
Sure. But could you give us some color on how the urban versus rural growth rates are panning out and what exactly is happening to your market share in both the segments, given that urban India has been more impacted by the COVID virus?
The challenges for rural growth have continued for the sector. Rural is still growing slower than urban. In quarter 4 for the industry, rural grew at about 0.9 times at urban. This was slightly better than quarter 3, where the growth rate was about 0.7 times of urban. In the past, as you know, rural has grown almost at 1.5 times of urban. So clearly the growth challenges in rural have continued.
Okay. What about raw material prices, especially for soap, where you had seen about a 30% rise? So what's the pricing strategy going ahead?
From an input cost perspective, I do believe that the situation so far can be reasonably managed. We did see a surge in palm oil derivative prices, but over the last few weeks, crude oil, which is an indirect cost, has come down. And so far, prices for palm oil derivatives have also been stable. So over the short term at least, we are not that worried as far as input costs are concerned. I think this can be managed relatively well.
With changing consumer behavior trends, particularly, shopping more online, looking for perhaps, more health and hygiene categories. How's the company preparing for some of these changes and also looking more closely at online distribution?
As you mentioned, we will definitely see the emergence of what a lot of us are calling a new normal as consumer behaviors and needs change both during COVID and in a post-COVID world. There are 5 big trends that we see. One is a flight to value as consumers look for more value for money, affordable, efficacious products. Second is digital and online will take more prominence. The third will be more focused on hygiene. The fourth will be increased relevance of do-it-yourself and do-it-at-home products. And the fifth is going to be greater polarization. We will see demand for both large packs in urban, sachets in rural areas. E-commerce will grow. We will see a resurgence of the Kirana stores. We do believe that we are very well positioned to capitalize on these changes and are working on several pivots to strengthen our business. Over 70% of our business is value for money and essentials. The Godrej brand name and its portfolio have always stood for trust, affordability, and high quality. And at times like this, consumer will look for more trust. The second, I think, area is a big focus that we're putting on hygiene. Hygiene will become the new core for us with a range of products and multiple brands. Again, this fits in very well with the Godrej ethos and brand name. And then the third is we are putting in playbooks in place to actually pursue a lot of these micro opportunities. What will happen over the next 6 to 12 months is that lockdowns will continue perhaps in some shape or form, but there will be opportunities. And so we have created a dedicated e-commerce business. We have lots of partnerships that we've launched with other players as well. And so the level of agility, the level of adaptability that you are seeing in the team is at an all-time high. And the team is fully geared up to be able to emerge stronger from this crisis.
We'll let you go on that note. Thanks very much, Vivek, for sharing with us the outlook on your volumes as well as the overall strategy for your individual segments.